living a musical life. You'd think I'd know more about it. It's been my entire life. And it's so much a part of my life that maybe I don't think about how the details of that differ from other lives. It's creative. It spurs thoughts in other areas. But the biggest thing about it, I think, is that it's satisfying. It's beautiful to create a lovely sound, a beautiful melody, a rhythm that grabs people. And that's both composing and playing live.
My name is Keith Phillips, I think. Yes, it is. And I'm a musician. I started when I was 8. I remember even within the first year finding an atmosphere with my instrument. I mean, it was me and the piano had some kind of recognition. I was drawn to that instrument.
My dad was a singer, and actually a very good one. My dad was one of the original members of the Hi-Lo's, which I think is really cool. He became a radio announcer, actually, and got on a pretty big station in the 60s, WLS in Chicago. And he noodled at the piano, and that was the music that I heard. But he always had great piano players on the hi-fi. Just about the time I was in my teenage years and wanting to quit, my dad got me jazz lessons, and that got me back in it. I had my first paid job when I was 16. And stayed with it ever since. That's all I've ever done.
I met Pam in high school. Music was the common bond at first. We were rivaling piano players. But then, as matters have it, we fell in love.
He was very giving, very generous, and very joyful. He loved what he did.
She's really the only person that I can share everything with. You know, we've known piano and love, and everything was just like a rope.
He was like the first person I knew that got into synthesizers and all the electronic music. That was kind of his ticket into theater too, because nobody else did.
Right after we got married, my wife and I got a job on the first national tour of Evita, and that started that phase of my career. I had never done a Broadway show. It was totally new territory to me, and to get that gig was just a miracle.
There were 8 shows a week. Every performance has to be as great as the first one was, but it's the same show over and over and over and over again. So that does get to be old.
When Andy was born, they were living up on 93rd and West End, and they were doing rehearsals all afternoons and then doing their shows. That's pretty much when Andy started coming home from preschool. So basically, they never saw him. They had always wanted to come out west, but when Andy came into the picture, that sort of accelerated the plan a little bit.
We'd been playing Broadway shows for 16 years. I had pretty much wrung it out.
Keith and I moved from New York to Jackson Hole in 1996 to explore some other genres of music and to stop and smell the roses.
It was a complete change of life in a huge way. You know, how could you possibly have a musical career out here?
As we were driving out here, I was thinking, yeah, maybe I can drive a school bus or something.
They both cobbled together whatever they could. You know, Keith had 3 or 4 different bands that he would sort of jump from band to band or just play on his own. Keith would go out there with his accordion, you know, and people are just like, where did this guy come from?
I told my wife, I said, these jazz musicians, these players want to come to town. They're playing Broadway and they want to come and live here.
I was a little bit nervous, Broadway musicians coming to town, working with New Yorkers. But the instant I met both of them, they were Wyomingites, I guess you could term them, and I think the community embraced it. They brought in a new style of music that wasn't typically presented here before. It enhanced the music scene immeasurably.
Used to be we would play a lot of country, a lot of pop, and rock. And then when the Phillipses came to town, the whole game was changed and elevated for those of us who wanted to play jazz. It was really astonishing to hear people play that caliber of music. For all of us, it was like, you want to play, you got to up your game.
To work out here was great. I loved it. I love the rhythm of waking up. I mean, the first summer I was here, I couldn't believe it. And yeah, it definitely seeped into my music for sure.
I don't know how you can not wake up and really feel it every day like you can here.
The musicians that Keith gathered around him were profound. And for this little tiny, geographically isolated place to have that sophisticated level of jazz musician, it's moving.
In good jazz, when everybody really is listening, it flows from one place to another. Without a word, it just moves.
We'd have to be watching each other and playing off of each other and learning how to do that with a great musician like Keith. It's one of the most fun things in my life is to play a set or two with Keith Phillips.
Performance for me is never perfect. There's always stuff wrong. Always has been, always will be. It's different every night. I think that's what's so beautiful about it, actually.
Keith Phillips is like an anchor for the band. Keith is the kind of guy who, without even saying a word, people tend to gravitate towards his energy and towards the way he plays. And when people hear him play, they're transcended.
Keith Phillips on the keyboards. All right, thanks.
He's there for every church service at our church. He's there for, it seems, every funeral. I wonder if Keith takes a vacation. Really.
He's always been an inspiration, I think, to the choir and to the congregation. But the choir in particular just thinks absolutely the world of him. And this trial that he's been through, if anything, it's just brought that out more.
People love Keith Phillips and want nothing more than for him to be able to play and play and play to his heart's desire.
I had to go forward. Everybody does. I'm going to keep giving lessons, performing, just as long as I can.
I think part of Keith's resilience comes from the fact that he had Andy to take care of, so he just wanted to keep everything as normal as possible for Andy. The radiation meant that he had to be at Salt Lake 5 days a week. So what he would do is he would go in for his treatments every day at 9 in the morning, and then he would go to Dane's Music in Salt Lake, which is the Steinway dealer, and they would just let him practice all day. So he was so happy that he could still play. I mean, that was huge for him.
You would think he would say, oh, I can't play this gig, or I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to do this. But he'd show up, and when we start playing, he's off and running, and he is most comfortable when he's sitting behind the piano keys and playing music. If I could face what Keith Phillips is facing as nobly and with such class as Keith does, that's what I would hope for. And he's showing us the way you should approach it. He's just dealing with it. And he's not sad about it. He's not moping about it. I would say take a lesson from Keith Phillips.
He gets an A.
He does.
The first time I'd ever really taught music was when we moved here. Because I hadn't been taught to teach, I had to come up with theories on my own. And when I'm thinking about what to teach, I think about what I need when I play. I have about 20 kids and about 8 adults.
For me, teaching is as much satisfying to myself as it is to see it happen to the student. I think that's actually what it is. If I see a light go on in their head, it makes me feel that I was able to interpret this idea so that they understood it and it meant something for them and they were able to make some music. Oh, and by the way, that sounds really good.
Thank you.
Yes.
When Keith says that, it means something.
I think it's really important that kids in their formative years are taught music because it's been proven that music study increases mathematical and scientific achievement and ability.
Every single lesson that I had with him was something that I came home and I comprehended and I worked on, and it was important to me. I respect every single moment. I wouldn't be here where I am today without him as a piano instructor.
This is a guy who's inspired and encouraged and empowered so many people to pursue musical dreams. When you've had such a positive impact on a community, it has a ripple effect. How do you quantify the impact of somebody who's given such an awesome gift to so many people? In a way, I think Pam and Keith will have a legacy in our community especially, but I think the world as well.
He has been a lesson in toughness. He just hasn't allowed himself to sink into any kind of negative projections.
I think if you were just an incredibly peaceful person and you're able to connect that feeling to music, you would create endless, incredibly peaceful, beautiful music that would grab people. I try to be open to something good happening. I just try to be open to something working. I want to accomplish something every day, and at the end of the day, I usually have. It may not be huge, but you're going forward.
I think the best thing he wrote was his ballet. And what's so amazing about the ballet is that he wrote it after he was diagnosed. Music poured out of him that I'd never heard before.
What music does in your life, it allows expression, it enables you to have fun, it empowers me, it satisfies me. It's a rewarding part of life. And if I can actually make a living that way, I can't think of a better way to do it.
I think he loves music so much that the music kept him going.
When you can look back and say, I've inspired, empowered, and encouraged other people with my passion, then that is a life justified.
If I could say one thing to the world, it would be more like Keith Phillips.
Everybody is on this long road to being musical. I know I am. I'm nowhere near the end of the road. I don't think anybody ever reaches the end of the road. It's just you're on that path the whole time. And if you keep working, you keep discovering.